With that background, let's welcome in Michael Cutler, a former INS officer who testified before the 9/11 Commission. I got to know him during my days in Congress post 9/11, and he is Skyping in this morning from New York. Michael, we appreciate your time. And
Always a pleasure to join you, JD. Thank you for having me.
Something else I think a lot of folks welcome is the headline in today's Washington Times: federal judge rules Obama amnesty order unconstitutional power grab. Now, it doesn't immediately overturn the action, but as you see it on the Washington Times website, this has the potential to really change things.
It does, and but the judge is right. I mean, of course, you know that the administration will probably take this all the way to the Supreme Court, and of course, meanwhile, every day that the nonsense continues, more illegal aliens pour into the United States, drawn here in part by the promises of the administration and failures to act to enforce the law. But this notion of, I called it actually prosecutorial deception, that which Obama calls prosecutorial discretion. You can't give millions of people the authority to remain in the country when there's no legal justification for it. It's one thing on a case-by-case basis to tell a family of a child that was hit by a car, God forbid, look, we don't expect you to go home, your child is in the hospital, or they're visiting a relative who falls ill and they want to stay to care for the family member. We've always allowed that. As an agent, we always adjudicated those applications to provide that kind of compassionate flexibility. We're not mean folks. But the idea that we're going to take millions of people and run them through the process, give them employment authorization, and Fox News just reported about the widening gap between American middle white wages and American minority wages is astonishing. We are undermining working Americans. We are undermining. Cruz said what he said. He wants a 500% increase in H-1B visas, which is part of what Obama wants also.
Well, you see the dynamic on the Hill, as you know, Michael, and this goes back to my days in Congress, because Silicon Valley and the internet has become the new source not only of a booming, what portions of our economy do boom, but quite frankly, a source. Now, I supported that 10 years ago when we had almost statistically full employment, but you cannot make that case now, yet both parties are trying to do it on H-1Bs.
Oh, absolutely. I had the distinct privilege of being on a panel discussion in Florida when I missed seeing you, and you were unfortunately not up to speed. You have fallen sick.
I had the flu. Yeah, it was tough. I don't want you to catch it, but go ahead.
No, well, at least over this connection, hopefully I won't.
Yeah.
But Senator Sessions made that exact point. He said, Silicon Valley just laid off 18,000 Americans, and meanwhile, Silicon Valley is talking about bringing in hundreds of thousands of new foreign workers. Why in the world would you want to bring in foreign workers when we can't get enough jobs for Americans? We don't need to create the jobs as much as we need to liberate the jobs by effective immigration law enforcement.
Law enforcement is one thing, but coming up in the next portion of our discussion, we're going to talk about when the law is used in another way. Not only H-1B visas, but allowing people into the country in terms of political asylum. Other nations have done it. We continue to do it here in the United States. When we come back with Michael Cutler, we will share some concerning numbers about the number of Middle Easterners who are granted political asylum or are about to be granted political asylum here in the United States. The legal way, if you will, to create yet more difficulties with immigration. We'll have more with Michael Cutler as we talk about this. A busy morning still to come later. Mideast expert Robert Rabil on what's going on in Pakistan and elsewhere. But back with Michael Cutler as we continue here on America's Forum. To talk more about the legal way, if you will, that may be compounding our immigration problems. Let's continue the conversation with former INS officer Michael Cutler. Michael, it's not always illegal immigration. It's using visas and political asylum. What is the latest? We've got, 9,000 Syrian refugees coming to the United States in the wake of all the strife there. Not all of them can be friendly, can they?
No, and they can't be vetted. I mean, think about it. How do you go about doing a background investigation on somebody who's coming from a war-torn country or comes from a country that's not friendly to us? I mean, do you think we dial up the Iranians and say, well, we've got this guy here from your country claiming political asylum. Is he a bad guy? I mean, how effective do you think that would be? Look at what happened with the Tsarnaev brothers. Even when we have a clear indication that these folks lied on their application for asylum. To qualify for asylum, the alien has to claim what's known as credible fear. If you send me home, I will face persecution or worse because of my race, religion, ethnicity, or political beliefs. So we have the Tsarnaev brothers who wind up attacking the Boston Marathon. We give them asylum. Within months, if not sooner, they go back voluntarily to Russia, where they claim they could not have returned to because they got asylum. Meanwhile, they're here, and here we are more than a year after the attacks. They just arrested their sister for threatening to blow up her ex-boyfriend. Why was she still wandering around the United States? Clearly, everyone knew that this family had lied on their applications. The 9/11 Commission warned that political asylum was one of the vulnerabilities easily exploited by terrorists. This guy Cansey, who shot up the CIA, 1993, applied for political asylum. Ramzi Youssef, first bombing at the World Trade Center, was granted political asylum. So we've seen this pattern. There was another guy from Eritrea who was smuggling aliens. According to the Justice Department press release, we granted him asylum within 6 weeks from Eritrea, and it turned out that he wasn't even in Eritrea when he was purportedly running for his life. He was in Guatemala smuggling aliens into the United States. There is no integrity to this process. So the terrorists have come to understand that they can use America's compassion as a weapon against us, and they are.
And along those lines, you call this entire topic essentially the president's gift to terrorists.
Absolutely. Because if you're willing to make it easy for these folks not only to gain entry, but embed themselves, and that's why it's so insane to be giving people identity documents without even a face-to-face interview. Think about Edward Snowden and how the president and members of Congress, both parties, both the House and the Senate, screamed about how Snowden's background investigation was conducted, screamed about how the Navy Yard shooter in Washington had a security clearance. These same people are willing to provide sight unseen millions of aliens who, let's face it, entered without inspection. Immigration agents refer to somebody who ran the border as an EWI, entrant without inspection, which I think sounds a lot more serious than simply undocumented, and it should be. It's sneaking in. Would you get on an airplane if you saw people sneak past TSA? We are now living with millions of foreign nationals whose identities and even countries of citizenship cannot be verified, but we're granting them lawful status. We're granting them driver's licenses in many states with the asylum policies. We are undermining our own national security. And a quick final thought here. Look at the business about the enhanced interrogation techniques, and I agree that we had to do whatever we have to do. But if we're willing to resort to that, why weren't we willing and still aren't willing to resort to common sense enforcement measures where immigration is
Bottom
concerned?
line is you don't have enforcement. You have, at the very least, bureaucratic inertia, and it could get a lot worse. Thanks very much.